So today the subject matter is what's for dinner, which I think is hilarious. I didn't even know that was in the Bible. I'll be interested to see what their scriptural support for that is. Anyway, what is for dinner? I mean, I read a quote from a lady the other day, Denise Schofield. She's a mom of 5 and an author, and she said, I spent the first 25 years of my life wondering who I was going to marry, and the next 25 wondering what's for dinner. And that is the truth. If you're a mom, you know it's hard because you have to do it every day. Every day. It's like Bill Murray movie Groundhog Day, where it's like the same day over and over again, and these kids want something to eat, and it needs to be nutritious, and you can't afford to go out, and who's got time for that? And so you wonder how to keep making it fresh and new over and over again. And I don't know how people do it, to be honest. I watch cooking shows on TV, and that seems a little frantic. I look up on the internet recipes, Pinterest, hundreds of recipes. I don't even know how to slog through all that. I go to Barnes & Noble looking for cookbooks for new ideas, and I get in there, and literally the ingredient list in some of these books is like 3/4 of the page. It's like 28 things. And I think this cookbook belongs in science fiction because that's never really going to happen in my world. And they want you to use utensils you don't own, to prepare ingredients you can't find, to make things your kids are not going to eat. That's the truth. And so, for me, I think you should just decide that if it takes longer to prepare it than it does for them to wolf it down or you to clean it up, forget it. So my 2 choices for dinner are the same every night. Take it or leave it.
Welcome today to food preparation and menu organization. Anita wanted to know what the Bible had to say about food, so we're going to have to show her a few things today. The first thing we're going to do is take a little test, just 5 questions. It'll be easy, so please pause your program, take the test, and we'll begin. Okay, how'd we do? Who scored 25? Okay. Who scored 17 or more? Okay, you're going to learn something. If you scored 15 or less, we're not going to have you show your hands, but you're definitely going to learn something today. Have you ever heard the saying, some eat to live, or some live to eat? I am definitely in the live to eat category. I grew up in a big Italian home where food was a big deal. And every gathering, every social event in our home was always done around food, around the kitchen table, in fact. We never even went into another room. So food has always been important to me. I love to cook, whether it's for 2 or for 22. And right now, we have an empty nest. But one thing I learned, even with an empty nest and cooking for just 2 people, that planning is essential. It is essential. You have to spend time to save time. That reduces stress in your home. Actually, there's a lot of benefits about food preparation for this essential of life. One benefit is research has shown that people who have family dinners 4 times a week, it has positive effects on child development. They have a lower risk for obesity, they have lower risk for substance abuse, and fewer eating disorders. 1 in 5 in the United States children aged 6 to 19 is overweight. That's a sad statistic. They are at risk at a young age for health problems, which produces health problems later on in life, as well as emotional problems. People who have family dinners 4 times a week with teens are less likely for those teens to struggle with smoking, substance abuse, or alcohol. It is also shown school grades are better for those who have family dinners 4 times a week or more. We know that the family dinner table fosters communication. I think this is becoming a lost art in today's society because there's so much reading iPads, reading iPhones, all those things, technology, and there isn't communication happening around the dinner table. The kids at the home dinner table will talk more freely. So if there's serious problems going on, you'll be more likely to hear them. They will have a greater sense of security. They will be able to express their opinions, which they may not be as likely to do otherwise. And you would have a more peaceful home with less stress. We know that this brings care for our families simply by providing for this basic need. One big benefit that I learned myself, our daughter went away to college. We were like, woohoo, we're going to eat out a bunch of times a month. And I gained 10 pounds in 1 month from eating out multiple times a week because restaurant meals are 60% more calories than homemade meals. So that long list of benefits shows you that this is a very important task, an essential task that we need to do to show love and care in our families. Well, I came up with 4 roadblocks to preparing food. The first roadblock would be simply, I don't have time. Now, this one could get any one of us. You have a busy day, you come home at 5 o'clock, oh, what are we going to have for dinner? Maybe we could have pancakes. My mother used to do that. We'd have breakfast for dinner sometimes when she didn't plan a meal. But in light of our busy schedules, I'm going to show you that with some pre-planning and a well-stocked freezer and pantry, you'll be able to even overcome that roadblock. The second roadblock is I simply don't know how. I've met many women who this is their roadblock. They didn't learn how growing up, they get married, they don't know what to do. One of the great blessings for Titus 2 encourages a mentoring relationship. And if this is your roadblock, I would encourage you to put yourself up under an older woman, that you could ask questions, that you could go over to her house, that you could be trained, because cooking is not that difficult. I think we make it a lot more difficult than we think it is. And today, the internet is a wealth of information for this roadblock. If you don't know how, I don't know how to bake a potato. You can simply Google that into your computer and find out how to do it. The third roadblock is I'm too tired. Fatigue. We all have struggled with this one. It's been a long, hard day. I don't know what to fix. I'm too tired. We're going to show you you're going to have meals in your freezer that's going to help with this roadblock. So when you struggle with whether I'm too busy or I'm too tired, if you've done that pre-planning beforehand, you're going to have meals on hand that you can simply pull out of your freezer, and that will overcome these 2 roadblocks. The fourth roadblock is simply, I don't want to. If this is your roadblock, then I would suggest an attitude change, because this is an essential task in the home. And remember, attitude is a choice. So, since we've talked about the roadblocks, we've talked about the benefits, how do I do this? What is the key to this? Well, I think the key to success is planning. Now, I'm going to tell you how I do it, but you can simply come up with your own solution, or in your workbook, there are many resources. I like to plan a month at a time. My man wants me sitting next to him on the sofa watching maybe sporting events. I don't really care about the sporting events. That's when I use that time. I print a blank calendar off of my computer and I sit right next to him with all of my cookbooks. And now I can plan my whole month's meals. I can plug in vacations when we're going to be out of town. I can plug in events or the kids' activities that I know are going to take us out on a certain night, or just simply a night that we like to eat out is Fridays. Fridays blank the whole month. If this seems too overwhelming to you, then try to pre-plan for 1 week. Just try it for 1 week at a time and see what works the best for you. I'm telling you what works the best for me, but I want you to do it so you do what will work the best for you. Food should be chosen for nutritious value. That's your first when you're choosing your food, as you're planning your meals, you want nutrition. We go back to that statistic that says 1 out of 5 children are overweight, so we want to be preparing healthy meals in the home to help reduce all of our health risks. Food should be chosen to give pleasure. It should bring cheer after a hard day. I think about how hard school is today and how your men walk in from a long, hard day at work. Food should be chosen to bring cheer. It should also be chosen to bring comfort for those who are in pain. We want to choose variety because we know that variety makes the food more interesting to eat as well as to cook. We don't want to cook the same thing, although if you have picky eaters, you may want to try what I knew a woman did, had the same thing all 7 nights of the week. So Monday night was spaghetti, Friday night was hamburgers, and it worked for her. You have to do what is going to work for you and work for your family. But I love God's great creativity in giving us all things, the bounty of things, the textures, the color, the variety of foods. We know that we eat with our eyes. That's the first thing. We see the food, we see the color, we see the textures. So we really do, we eat with our eyes. But we also, the smell is important. We want to walk in and have that smell, that aroma is so essential in cooking, as well as taste. We want to get inspired by what is available. So we're going to run through the 4 seasons really quickly. I'm just going to touch on a few little highlights, but this is just, again, to get you thinking, to get you started. We're going to start with winter. Obviously, winter, we need comfort food. We need stick-to-the-rib food because it's cold out, and we need food that has substantial substance, like chicken pot pies and stew and chili and soups. But this is one thing about thinking about preparedness, is when you're making a pot of homemade soup, don't make soup for one night. Always make a big pot of soup, because now you'll have one for now and one for later, for those nights when you're too tired or you're too busy. The other thing is, with soups, I am not a recipe follower, but I have many friends who do follow recipes. So if you have leftover cabbage in your produce drawer or leftover beans, throw those in the soup. That waste not, want not. Some of my friends say, oh, but it's not on the recipe. Oh, but it's good, and it adds variety, and you're using up what you already have on hand. Same with those little tiny bits of vegetables that you have left in the freezer that you don't know what else to do. Throw them in the soup. One other thing that you can do is when foods are in abundance, like corn and berries, you freeze those for the winter months. Now you have fresh corn frozen in your freezer available to throw in your soup pots. Moving to spring, we know that the weather warms. We think about Easter. I automatically think about asparagus and beans and peas and ham, just because of Easter. There are some other good choices, such as tougher cuts of meat like brisket, flank steak, ground meat. Seafood is another wonderful thought for spring. Well, you say, well, my family doesn't eat fish. Try tilapia. Very mild fish, very inexpensive, and if you think they won't like it prepared and served on a plate, put it in a taco. You put it in a soft tortilla, you bread your fish, fry your fish up a little bit, you put in some slaw and a little bit of like a tartar sauce. I guarantee you they'll eat it. Another good thought for spring, if you're thinking healthy eating, if you want meatless nights, you can do pastas with vegetables. Those are wonderful, and lots of resources. Again, using up what you have or using what is inexpensive. When we think about summer, we automatically think about grilling. We use our grill in the summer probably 4 nights a week. One thing that you might not think about is grilling vegetables, especially if you're going to host a dinner party, because you can do these the day before. They look beautiful on a plate. You've got all that color, all that texture, all that wonderful taste. And leftover, you can use them the next couple days, either in a sandwich or in a salad. They'll stay for several days just like that, just grilled, and you can eat them cold. Another fun mealtime in the summer is pizzas. Everybody is in the kitchen making their own pizzas. The kids love that. The grocery stores now sell already made pizza dough, very inexpensively, a couple of dollars. You bring it home, you let it rise, you make the children's little pizzas. Now they can put on whatever they want, and they love that. And again, you're fostering that communication together, you're fostering that community, you're fostering that security within the home by doing things like that. The last thing I think about for summertime eating, obviously, is salads because of the abundance of produce. And with 3 ounces of protein, your salad becomes a meal. And there's lots of suggestions for salads in your workbook. Lastly, I move to fall. The weather gets a little bit cooler. The very first thing I think about for fall is pork. I don't know why. Pork tenderloin, pork roast, and root vegetables. That to me is just an automatic fall meal. And again, you start now, I'm going to make a little more stew. I'm going to make a little more soup. Now, let's shift gears to the importance of a well-stocked pantry, refrigerator, and freezer. Because we know that seasons of life, sickness, injury, accidents, and death do not give warning. We want to be able to have on hand the items to prepare a meal in a day's notice. So if you're going to the grocery store every time something happens or your neighbor needs a meal, you've got to run to the grocery store, you are losing valuable time and energy. I want to remind you of the story of Abigail in 1 Samuel chapter 25. You might remember she was married to Nabal, who, just a side note, his name meant fool. King David and his men were on the run from Saul, and they came to Nabal's property. He was a wealthy landowner. They needed to have some provision and some food. And back in that culture, that was very common to share whatever you had with travelers. So David sent some servants to Nabal to ask him for some provisions, and Nabal decided against it. He was not going to help David. Like, David who? Son of Jesse who? So the servants go back and report this to David. David comes up with a plan that he's going to go and kill Nabal. One of the servants goes home to Abigail, who is married to Nabal. And she must have had a well-stocked tent because she immediately prepared 200 loaves of bread, 100 cakes of raisins, 200 cakes of pressed figs, some dressed sheep, and some roasted grain. She saved her family from disaster. Now, our lives may not have such dramatic results as far as preparedness, but earlier this year, I took a fall and injured my foot. I could not be on my feet for about 6 weeks. And because of pre-planning and preparedness, I had food in my freezer that we could live off of. I'm going to give you a few simple hints here as it relates to being prepared ahead of time. You want to cook simultaneously. We talked about that a little bit with soup, but if you're making meatloaf, don't make just one meatloaf. You make 2 meatloafs. If you have a tendency to buy meat in smaller portions, start to think larger portions because you want to always cook simultaneously. Being Italian, I always have to have spaghetti sauce in my freezer. I would eat pasta a couple times a week, but I didn't marry an Italian, so I like to have little containers of sauce with meat in my freezer. And on those days when my roadblock of being too tired or my roadblock of being too busy hits, I can go to my freezer, pull out a container of sauce, and I've got a whole meal. So do you understand what I mean by cooking simultaneously? Okay, leftovers. My man does not like leftovers. So I have a little secret for you girls. We have a big pork roast one night. He's a meat eater. He eats that pork roast. He leaves the kitchen. I wrap the pork roast up. About 2 days later, I take that pork roast back out, throw it in the food processor, process it into little tiny bits of pieces, throw on some barbecue sauce, put it on a bun. He sits down. He has no idea he is eating that pork roast from 2 days before. He thinks he's got a whole new meal. It is a great little trick. You can do it with anything. If I'm making rice, I never make 1 cup of rice. I always make 2 cups of rice. So now remember, if rice is your side dish on your menu plan, a couple of days later, you want to plan something like fried rice or a soup that you can throw the extra rice into and make it go further. Just think ahead how you can use something that you're making today to multiply it to use in a couple of days. So leftovers, you won't ever have leftovers sitting in your refrigerator or that get thrown in the trash. Use your crock pot. It is the genius appliance of the 21st century. Genius appliance. It works. You put this stuff in there in the morning, you walk in at the end of the day, and there is supper. You should really use your crock pot. Rotisserie chickens. If you're having rotisserie chicken one night, I never buy 1. I always buy 2. We eat 1. I cut all the meat off of the other one. Or if you don't want to spend the money for a second rotisserie chicken, when you buy chicken that you're going to bake or grill, buy extra. You cook it all, you shred it, you put it in your freezer. I am never without cooked chicken because, again, if disaster strikes or sickness strikes or accident strikes or whatever is the disaster, I have got chicken already cooked in my freezer. I can make a casserole. I can make fried rice. I can add it to salads. I can shred it for tacos, enchiladas, quesadillas. Add it to soup, add it to stew, add it to chili. Add barbecue sauce or hot wing sauce. You get the idea. There is a lot that you can do if you already have it in your freezer all ready to go. The next thing is embrace convenience. I do realize that it does cost more, but today we have salads that are in the bags. We have vegetables already cut up. If you're in a season of life where you really don't have a lot of extra time, then use the convenience that is out there. And lastly, you want to have healthy, good snacks on hand for the children. So when they come in the door and they're hungry, you can give them some cheese or some fresh fruit or some granola bars. I would prefer to reach for the potato chips, but that is not a healthy alternative like these others are. Don't let the demands and challenges of life keep you out of the kitchen. We want to aim for variety and creativity as it relates to cooking. This one chore in our homes that is such an essential for life. You too can be amazing by planning and preparing food for your family to meet their essential need.
Growing up, supper time was a family event at our house. It was really important that despite our busy schedules, we had family supper where we sat down over a homemade meal and we talked about our day. 20 plus years later, I remember the emphasis that my mom put on having us all sit down together to have quality time around the dinner table. Now that I have a family of my own, I try to carry on that tradition, emphasizing the same importance to my children. A huge part of making dinner a quality time experience with your family is being prepared. It's hard to provide a healthy homemade dinner at the last minute. Nobody likes going to the grocery store multiple times a week or going out in rush hour to get food for dinner time. When I do this, I'm stressed, we eat late, and then my children go to bed late. My lack of planning creates a negative ripple effect to our evening, and it leaves me disappointed in myself. Planning meals does take time up front, but it eliminates the stress in preparing them. As homework, my mom gave me the assignment to plan, prepare, and expedite a meal for dinner one night a week. At first, I was completely overwhelmed by the idea, but as time went on, I felt more confident and I began to try new things. I enjoyed cooking and I looked forward to my assigned night. When my mom didn't have time to prepare dinner for the evening, I would willingly take over. My initial intimidation of cooking turned into excitement and confidence by the time that I graduated high school. Meal planning carried over into my college days, where my roommates and I each cooked one night a week for one another and an occasional guest. This continued my meal planning and preparation as I was getting closer to becoming a wife. Now that I have my own family, I can plan and prepare meals with confidence and ease thanks to the many years of past experience that I had doing it. I'm blessed to have such wonderful training in the kitchen, and I plan on passing my experiences, my knowledge of cooking, and confidence to my daughter.